And we're doing today.
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing good, doing good. I think your microphone might be picking up from the computer. We're
No,
gonna work.
it's AC. It just kicked on.
It's the AC. You think that's doing it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll check that out. Coming over for some technical difficulties here. But, happy Friday, everybody! Here on the Roll Up Weekly Roll Up. Here, we got John out of the office today, but as usual, Jason's filling in, and things are going good. What do we got there? Hey, what's up, Ian? Is it the audio? Let's see here. Let's go ahead and get directly into what we're talking about today. So it's a weekly roll up, and this week the top things from around the way here is we're talking about a research bill that was passed, bipartisan research bill that was passed just last week, despite 75 nay votes from Republicans in the House. So we're going to go over that list of Republicans, the 75 people who voted against it, and let you guys know which states they're from and who you need to write if you're from those states, because that's standing in the way of progress. The next thing we got coming up is that we've got access for medical cannabis in California. And this is actually something I was pleasantly surprised to see today. It was something. There's a Senator Wiener is out there and getting us back to our roots on why we actually did this in California. Ultimately, it was about medical access for people who needed it for medical purposes, and we've kind of run over a couple of those horses with the cart, so to speak. And finally, yesterday we had a new bipartisan bill filed. I'm not sure if it was in response to the MORE Act passing, or if it's something to get a more comprehensive going. But we're going to look into that a little bit, and we're going to talk about why the people who put that bill in front of it voted no against the MORE Act. So, without further ado, Jason, how goes it?
All right. Can you hear me now? Is it better?
It's way better. Sounds
Okay,
great.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah. I think we picked up the wrong microphone. And Ian, yes, hello from Ireland, where people can't do any of this stuff. I'm sorry, and I understand that face now. But yeah, great to have you on the show. Um, and well, I hope Ireland gets its act together there, because essentially this is something that well, everyone should have access to, especially whether you're talking medically or recreational. So thanks for joining us, and Donkey Limit, thanks for being here. But yeah, Jason. So first order of business. Um, what says you about this research bill nay votes list? Do we want to get
Well, I
into
guess
that,
should
or
we should we should
go
we
ahead?
kind of discuss a little bit about what it is? So I guess people who are not familiar with the actual act entailed, or what it's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go over that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's trying to allow scientists to be able to access products from dispensaries to study. Correct.
Correct.
And essentially, there's a lot of the benefit studies that they want to do, but I think some of the things that are really standing out is, for example, they're trying to study, how the effects are on your impairment. So,
Right.
being kind of like a comparison with alcohol, you don't get arrested for drinking a week ago or a month ago. You know what I mean? So that's the issue right now is with testing, is that, where should the boundaries of legality be? As far as how long you're impaired, and have something more similar to like a alcohol blood test, but with or breathalyzer or whatever have you. But in this day and age, there's nothing like that. We need the research to do that, and this is one of the things that it's going to be facilitated by this bill. Um, and I also saw that currently there is a lot of research being done, but not by us. They're
Right.
everything because of the legality issue. They're all being sourced out to different countries, to Israel, um, which it's we need to figure it out on our own. We need to have our top scientists look into it, and if we're going to really adopt a framework and a structure and a legal system around it, it's going to have to come from our data. So this is, I think, the first step.
Absolutely, absolutely. And regardless of the fact, the list that we're going to go over here in a minute, the Medical Marijuana Research Act was sponsored by what they're calling the unlikely duo of pro-legalization Rep. Earl Blumenauer, which is the Democrat from Oregon, and the prohibitionist Republican Andy Harris, a Republican from Maryland. It passed with a 343 to 75 vote. Again, we're going to be talking about the 75 people who voted against it. And a lot of it is because of, I think, Blumenauer says it well. The cannabis laws in this country are broken, including those that deal with medical research in marijuana. America's growing cannabis industry operates without the benefit of a robust research program. Instead, we are outsourcing research to Israel, like you said, the United Kingdom and Canada to our detriment. He goes on to say, one example of this policy failure is our inability to effectively test for cannabis impairment. We were talking about that on the buzz earlier today, based upon New Jersey just passing, recreational and saying that it's okay for off-duty police officers to engage. But again, employees are failing drug tests, not because they're impaired, but because they use recreational or medical cannabis sometime in the last month. This is just one of the symptoms of a short-sighted, illogical, and destructive set of policies. Wow, right? I think he said it pretty darn well when it comes down to that. And yeah, when it comes down to it, it's this is the sediment that needs to start setting in. And we were talking about it is right now, those research efforts are going towards public safety, right? Mm-hmm. Public safety. And that's really what it boils down to each their own, as long as it doesn't affect other people. And as much as a lot of people in the comments and a lot of the everyday cannabis users will say, hey, cannabis doesn't affect me like alcohol affects me. I'm fine to drive this way. I'm trying to drive that way. Once we're talking about recreational on a mass level, you're talking about involving people who don't consume all the time, who don't show signs of the ability to, who do act impaired and lose the ability for reaction times and all that kind of stuff. And that's realistically what these research studies are about in public safety. But again, why would anybody be against research right now? And that's why we're pulling up these 75 names here, so you can know who they are. And as I'm navigating to that, Jason, what do you think would be some of the reasons to stand against this right now in the way of research? Why are these 75 people holding out on it? And obviously it's just your opinion. I get
that. Well, I mean, it seems, if you're 100% against cannabis and you don't want it in your state and you don't want it happening, you probably would vote no, because you just don't want anything to do with it. But it's very naive, considering, most of the politicians are stating a number of 91% approval among citizens, which is really high. But I've seen that numbers touted off multiple times. So in the case of 91% of people who are okay with allowing cannabis for recreation or for medicinal, and then you're still going to be against it, where you're trying to voice the opinion of your entire state, or your entire whoever you represent. It's it doesn't make sense. But that could be one. I mean, if you look at it in a deeper level, maybe they don't want to research it because they still want to demonize it. Right now, without the research, it is, people who are not familiar with it and don't know everything. It's still kind of the whole reefer madness, and it's just kind of out there. When you have scientists that have been vouched for, hired by the government, that are saying, hey, it's safe, this is how you use it, then suddenly it's a accepted thing. And there may be a lot of people out there that just don't want that to happen, even though they know the truth about it. I mean, that's just my opinion. What do you think?
No, it's all of that, and it's I think we talked about it before. It's people sticking to their partisan party beliefs rather than letting common sense reign free, right? And they're holdouts, staunch holdouts for a specific reason, but none of them really good at this point, especially when concerning just we're talking about really the research bill at this point, right? We're not talking about the MORE Act. We're not talking about legalization or decriminalization or anything. We're talking about the research to get us there. Why wouldn't you want that to happen? So, hey, as we're going to do that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up this screen here and screen share a little bit. We're going to go ahead and do this now. I'm sharing. Let's see how that does for us. And we're up. All right. So at the top here, I'm going to try to get us back to the top of this by navigating. We are looking at an alphabetical list with the states. And again, these are Republican House members that voted nay against the bipartisan research bill that was actually put together by a Republican and Democrat. Now, we don't play politics here. We did not make up this list. The people who voted nay made up this list. This is literally the only 75 people who voted against the research bill. They all just happen to be Republicans. Again, we're center of the aisle on this. We don't play a part when it comes down to political parties. This has to do with antiquated thinking, nothing else. That being said, we're going to go ahead and start alphabetically. You guys can see the list, but really it doesn't just pertain to one state or one area or that kind of thing. You're looking at Republicans from California and Alabama and Georgia and that kind of thing. Alderholt, the person that I just covered up with that arrow there, is a Republican from Alabama. Joyce, Pennsylvania, is someone we're going to be talking about in a second, because Joyce is somebody who I do believe just actually participated in the new act that was put down yesterday, and that is the Prepares Act. So we're going to be talking about Joyce here shortly and why he said that he voted no on the MORE Act as well as this act. So, yeah, from Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Indiana, Oregon, these people are part and parcel why we're not getting the laws we need to be put into place before this legalization and decriminalization happens, right? So within that, this is why we're putting the list up, is so that if you happen to be from these states and you happen to know who these House members are or how to get a hold of them, this is who you need to write, because these are the people literally standing in the way of progress when it comes down to research. And so, yeah, I know that I know that a lot of people in the comments come from different states, and a lot of our watchers come from different states. So this again is something that we promised we'd go over and talk to people about. I don't know, I see a lot of action in the comments right now, but I'm not sure if it's specific to this. Jason, do you see any common thread in here, or is it just holdouts? Because I'm not, I'm not familiar with all of these people. I'm familiar with a few of the names from states that I know and a few of the states that have been in the news recently. But are you seeing any common threads here?
Not really. I mean, aside from the fact that they're Republicans, I mean, it could simply be like what we stated, that they're just, what the old fashioned thinking is, this will obviously, as we're saying, bring us closer to legalization and closer to a point where, people can use it at their will. And they understand that stifling this would stifle that entire agenda. So I think that is part of it. There may be a couple in there that have a deeper look at it, and maybe they've found some fine print or found some issues with the bill. But I think more we're looking at kind of old thinking, to be honest.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, no, it's and this is the list, so I'm not sure where everybody's from. I know we've got a few people. Philip usually checks in from Texas, and through that we found a few more people from Texas. But it looks like we've got quite a few Republicans there. That's an obvious and unexpected, I would say. But that's a list where I'm hoping that everyone can see that. What we'll do is go ahead and We'll post a link to this list in the description afterwards, in the description if you guys want to get to it later. But as of right now, we're just going to keep this here for a second before we move on to the next portion of the show. But if you see any states that you're from, or you see any names that you know how to reach out to or write to, I'd say that make sure you take a mental note or a screen snap of this list, and you write the corresponding people to do with that. So yeah, if you know in the next, donkey limit, Illinois. I mean, even us being from California, seeing people from California on there, it's like, wait a second, that stinks. All right, the link worked for you. Perfect. Okay, so thanks, Michael Payton Sr. for saying that. Let's go ahead. I'm going to stop the screen share for right now. And there we go. All right. There was our first fun screen share too. Thanks for being a part of that, everybody. So one of the next big things here, we're going back into a little bit of state politics, of which I think can lead more to a federal push within this, is because on this show we've talked about it a little bit before, and this is something that's near and dear to me. Jason, I want to get your take on it, but it's Senator, is it Wiener or Wiener?
Either way is bad, but I don't know.
Yeah. So Senator Wiener, Senator Wiener pushes to restore access to medical cannabis in California. Bill passes Senate committee, right? Senate Bill 1186, which claims to put back voter-created access to medical cannabis across California, sponsored by Senator Scott Wiener, Democrat from San Francisco, recently passed the Senate Business and Professions Committee by a vote of 8-3. The bill was sent to the Senate Governance and Finance Committee, according to the senator official website. He goes on to be quoted as, access to medical cannabis is both a health and equity issue, which is why we need to ensure everyone who needs this medicine, including seniors, those living in rural areas, and those living with chronic illness, have access, says Senator Wiener. No one should have to drive 2 hours to buy from the illegal market or in order to get their medicine. That's unacceptable and undermines the will of the California voters. SB 1186 ensures that every Californian can access medical cannabis either at a store or by delivery. I want to hear what you have. What do you think on that? Good sir. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when it's deemed legal in the state, especially for the medical side, and people are depending on this for their well-being, they should have access to it. The issue is right now that California allows each individual city to determine if they want to allow it or not. And that's the problem, is if you live in a city, even though it's legal in the state, and then the city says, sorry, we're not going to allow dispensaries or medical dispensaries or whatever in there, and they, now you have to drive out of the city, maybe out of the county, to get your prescriptions. If it's going to be legal, it's got to be legal. I know this bill, I mean, if everything goes through, then they will make it illegal for cities to block people from having access to it. It's gonna, so it'll open up a lot more opportunity in the medical space. It's interesting because I think it's kind of a precursor to look at how it may play out long term, because the same thing's going to happen nationally. Even if federally it's going to be legalized, they're still going to say, oh, state by state, or if it's not state by state, it's going to be county by county. So if they deem it, like, at least for the medicinal side, that they have to allow it to be offered in the legal state and allow people to have access, whatever happens on this is going to, I think, make a statement for the future. What's your take on that? Yeah.
Well, what you mentioned about alcohol, right? That's a great point, because there are still holdout counties. There's dry counties when it comes to alcohol and that kind of thing. But alcohol is not considered a medicine, of which this is. And realistically, that's the difference. People having access to it should be mandatory, right? There's counties here in California, and I'm sure across the U.S. that would try to not allow for delivery, even if they outlaw stores and that kind of storefronts and that kind of stuff. Not allowing for delivery, that automatically makes what the senator said true, right? They got to drive hours for this, right? So, yeah, I think it's a great thing. We were the first state to bring in California to bring in medical marijuana legalization, and I think it's only fitting that we say, hey, you know what? Again, we let the cart get in front of the horses here. We've run over a couple of our core principles and why we drafted this in the first place, and it's time for us to correct our direction, to right the ship, if you will, and to get going again for the people who we passed this law for, and ultimately on a state by state level of medical came before recreational in almost all circumstances, right? So again, this should serve, like you said, as something to look at when it comes down to other states and making sure that the medical programs stay intact and service the people of which the original laws were drafted for.
Absolutely. And it kind of all ties into everything. If there's more research that's done that kind of shows the efficacy, doctors, and we always talk about, we just need really solid, reputable doctors to vouch for it. They see all the research, but a lot of them don't want to put their name on the line until they see like an actual, federally funded, study, large
Right.
group study and things like that. But once that happens, it's so detrimental if something's helping. There's a lot of veterans that are using it. There's a lot of people that really depend on it, and if they can't get access, even though it's legal, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things where, again, it was the warriors who got us to this point that really put their lives out there and put themselves on Front Street to show the world, to show the federal authorities, to show the state's authorities that, you know what, I do better from this, and this is a human issue. This is a quality of life issue, and realistically, you, Mr. Local Municipality, you, Mr. State Governor, you, Mr. Federal Government, have the ability to make my life a little bit better. Why won't you? Right? We know enough about this that we know that it's better for you than drinking a bunch of alcohol to deal with mental health problems. It's got less side effects than anything else recreational. Why wouldn't it be allowed? So yeah, it's time to make sure that as we're drafting all this, just it's akin to people still being in prison for this, right? As we're going legal with it, and there's still people who their lives are being affected on a daily basis. I would attribute that to a quality of life thing too, right? Is being in prison over
Absolutely.
a plant.
Yeah.
Right? This is a quality of life thing. This is a losing your life thing over a plant, where some people can live in some states, right? And it's completely legal and it's completely okay. It's even part of the makeup here in California, right? But there's still these other holdout states as to where there's someone who could lose their life over the same thing that I'm going to go spark up in a second in the parking lot. I mean, we
Really?
laugh at it because I'm going to go spark up, but realistically, it's not
Yeah.
funny that someone could go to
Yeah.
do the same thing in a different state and get thrown in jail right away.
Absolutely.
It's crap.
Yeah.
So hey, before we go on to the next story, I want to make sure, and we've been getting a lot more new viewers to the shows and that kind of stuff. If it's your first time here, or if you're in the comments, please give us a like, share, subscribe to the channel. If it's your first time here, it really helps us get out to other people. For right now, we're for some odd reason we're being restricted in our use. Again, we're not smoking anything or doing anything on it, but somebody out there is not liking. And so really to help us get out to other people that join in this cause and help us get over the finish line with this, it really helps when you guys like and subscribe. So thanks a lot for that. And on to the next story. Of which, we covered something today, but we'll add it in there. Jason, were you familiar with the fact that Schumer's bill, which was supposed to be coming out sometime around the end of April, which everyone was speculating, hopefully, that it was going to be 420, has been kicked now out to at least the August recess, or shortly before. Did you hear anything about that? How Schumer's bill is being postponed?
I didn't know.
Okay, well, we covered that earlier on the Buzz, and we talked about it a little bit. So we'll rehash that real quick, just so that everyone's on the same page with that. Where Schumer's bill, marijuana moment, is, again, there's some guys we love to work with, and we get a lot of this news from them. They covered this, and Schumer's marijuana legalization bill not coming this month as senators work to finalize, basically finalize provisions. What we brought up, so Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, has said on several occasions that the bill he's been working on with the Senate Finance Committee, Chairman Ron Wyden from Oregon and Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey for many months, would be formally filed by the end of April. That's no longer the case, with the leader now saying the official introduction will take place sometime before the August recess. So that happened, and right before that happened, a bipartisan group of congressional lawmakers filed a bill on Thursday that would direct the Attorney General to create a commission charged with making recommendations on a regulatory system for marijuana that models what's currently in place for alcohol. This bipartisan bill was championed by Representative Dave Joyce, Republican from Ohio, Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat from New York, and Brian Mast, a Republican from Florida. And the bill is titled "Preparing Regulators Effectively for a Post-Prohibition Adult Use Regulated Environment Act," which they're calling the PREPARE Act. So with what was happening with Schumer and the prolonged nature of this MORE Act and what was coming along on the the AOCA, or whatever was going to be drafted from the MORE Act, it seems like there's a bipartisan effort to get things moving along. Did you read that article? So I'm trying to think. Do you think it's in response? Do you think it's hey, different groups saying, you know what, that's an incomplete bill. Here's some other things you need to think about, or do you think it's just another look at what we might need to actually get this thing across the finish line?
I think it's in preparation. They just want to put something in place that's going to oversee everything. I think that's kind of the plan. It's like almost like okay, we got to take this seriously now. Like, everything's going to happen. We need we need a dedicated group to kind of handle all this. It's too much for just a few people to take a look at. That's just in my opinion. I think that it's kind of like a ramp up for everything.
I have to agree on that.
Yeah.
Really, I know there's been now bills coming from either side of the aisle, but there hasn't been something presented, I don't think, in this case, in a bipartisan fashion that would say, hey, let's get the show on the road. I know on the local municipal level, this is how it happens, right? They form special committees called ad hoc committees, right? Ad hoc committees to do this. And they go around, they find out as much information as they can, and they determine the right path forward. Now, is that going to be a perfect path forward? Most of the time, in my personal opinion, as a lobbyist and an activist here in cannabis in California, it's nowhere near perfect, but it's forward movement. And that's the biggest thing, right? It's forward movement. So I think really, in other words, what they're saying is, let's form an ad hoc committee, right? It's like, hey, these bills are coming about from here and these bills are coming about from there. But here's a quote from them: with 91% of Americans supporting either medical or recreational cannabis, it's time for the federal government to respect the will of the voters, both Democrat and Republicans alike, and begin a serious conversation about what a post-prohibition America should look like, Joyce said in a press release. And that came from Joyce. Like I was saying, he was the one one of the people that presented this Prepares Act. But further down that story, he goes into saying why he did not vote on the MORE Act, right? Joyce supports the end of federal prohibition and serves as one of the 2 GOP members on the Congressional Cannabis Caucus. However, he voted against the MORE Act and explained his reasonings to his colleagues, as well as in an op-ed that we went over earlier. Basically, he's stating, you know, for the record, that again, the will of the people is not being served. This cause is not being championed in the right way. So it's one of those things as to where, you know, the people who came out with the bills first, Nancy Mace came out with the Republican bill, Schumer came out with this bill. Really, though, is this the overall sentiment from those 2 parties? And I think what this group is saying is, no, that's not. We got a lot to talk about, which again, I think is a good thing, you know, overall. I know you pay attention to a lot of local politics and that kind of stuff, you know, around where we're from and on a traditional scale and level. What is it about this process that might be different than other laws, or is it pretty similar to the way that traditional laws or other traditional industries might might have to go through that we're not going through?
You know, I think it's kind of hard to say, and I think that's the reason why this is happening. Is, you know, everything is happening pretty. I mean, for us in the industry, it's pretty slow, but in reality, such a big industry just emerging out of nowhere, it's actually a pretty quick process for the country to kind of absorb. And I think they're starting to realize that, hey, this is kind of bigger than we think. It's not just about, you know, is it going to be recreationally legal or not, or medicinally legal or not. There's a lot that's going to go into it, and I think they're acknowledging that, and they're saying, okay, we need to put a task force together who's going to look at all the aspects of it. Right. You know, the implications on tax, and that was one of the things that we were talking about with Joyce. Why the MORE Act? I think he was saying that he was against it because the taxes were unfairly kind of penalizing the legal operators by kind of making them flip the bill for some of the illegal operations and things like that. And that's, you know, that's when you're looking at this Prepare Act as a comparison to alcohol, and that's essentially because they have nothing else to compare it to. They don't know what else, how they can model it, and the closest thing, I guess, is alcohol. But as we know, there's not a really a defined medicinal use for alcohol. So there's a whole different side of it. There's so much more application for cannabis than alcohol. It's a list that I think they're beginning to see how big this list is, and it needs to be addressed on different facets. Part of the problem is the fact that hemp can be classified in so many different ways. If you're talking about hemp and then or cannabis, THC, whatever, non-THC, they're very afraid on how it's going to all play out because there's a lot of crossover and things like that. Right. But if you look at the industry and alcohol, I mean, you don't have them flip the bill for all the illegal activity that happens with alcohol. You know what I mean? Right. That's, I mean, alcohol is probably blamed for like 90% of problems and crimes that are out there. So they're not flipping the bill for all that. You know, it shouldn't be like that for cannabis. And then that's kind of what's going on. What they want to do is like, okay, if you guys want it legal, then you're going to have to pay for all the additional issues that come with having it legal. That's kind of been the mantra before, but now they're acknowledging that you can't do it that way. It's much more complex. There's a lot more factors involved. There's a lot more people that will be benefited and hurt with this if it's done in certain ways. So it's just too much for them to handle unless they build a team specifically that's going to be focusing on it.
Right. Well, just like we did here in California, right? You have the Department of Cannabis Control,
Yeah.
and back in the day, and it's an antiquated agency, and a lot of people would say it should be disbanded. But I know that they're a federal agency that alcohol, tobacco, and firearms (ATF), right? Um, while we don't want the ATF involved in cannabis because of the federal nature of that. Essentially, a federal agency like that, some sort of oversight or somebody looking into more of what you said, the criminal activity surrounding it, rather than an auditing business, right?
Mhm.
Uh, like the DCC or Department of Cannabis Control here, or how Oregon does it with the OLCC, which is Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission, and having something like that on a federal level that really doesn't have the intentions of kicking down your door and serving some warrants on you like the ATF. I think that's what we're looking at here, and I think it needs to be right. Otherwise, we're going to relinquish control to the powers that be currently that know nothing about this and have to learn the same as anybody else, rather than serving a a caucus or a committee that specifically has this in mind, right? Um, so yeah, overall, I think it's a move that has to make, and then overall, it's a positive thing to be having other people throw some bills out right now, especially kind of taking into account where we're at in this process, which is before the starting line, right? We don't have a starting line yet, not until one of these bills makes it past the Senate.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think it's all like all hurdles that are that are detrimental to the cause, because if you just kind of legalize it and just let just have it be the Wild West and everybody kind of just go for it, that there's going to be rules that'll be put on later. There's going to be you know usage limits. There's going to be all sorts of things that are just going to pop up just because there's no structure to it. So I think
Right.
that they're understanding that having a foundation, that like a strong foundation with a strong structure that everybody understands first, will allow it to be a more smoother deployment, and it'll be longer lasting and more favored among everybody at the end of the day.
Right.
I think that's a hope, and hopefully that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, there's still a lot to figure out, right? Is this going to stay? The dispensary model is going to stay? Is it going to be integrated into society a little bit more? For the next 10 years or so, as we get this patient access figured out, as well as recreational, it's probably going to stay pretty close to what it is. But 5, 10 years from now, in a more regulated and regular environment, what does this industry turn into? And a lot of these regulations, a lot of these committees are going to determine um, how well these entrepreneurs that are beginning in the cannabis industry are actually going to do. It could turn people's worlds upside down based upon what's happening. So it's good that they're thinking about this up front, because along the way, um, 5, 10 years from now, like you said, they could discover things along the way that haven't been done, and then just really flip everything upside down with the
Exactly.
implementation of regulations. Kind of like what happened in the vape world when it came to nicotine vape and that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Nicotine vape,
Yep.
yeah, because that was something that needed to happen along the way, and they got caught behind the 8 ball on that one.
Yep.
And yeah, all of a sudden they're having to tell kids that smoking vaporizers, even though it tastes like cotton candy, is not good for you. And yeah, and then criminalizing that whole industry and making it something that it bigger than it's supposed to be. Anyway, again, I think really on that we touched on that, and it's a good deal. It's a good thing that they're getting this stuff out there, and um, the more that's presented, I think the more that responses are going to come about, and the more the American people are going to get to see, as long as you're reading along with these bills, and there's people putting out the fine points of these bills, bullet pointing them, and making sure that the important stuff gets out, whether it's tax rates or availabilities, or states rights to opt in or opt out, home grow rights, all that kind of stuff need to be paid attention to. So Yeah. Well, on the buzz and that kind of stuff, we've been walking people through the office. I don't know that we're prepared for that, but that brings us to the end of the weekly roll up here. Do you have anything that we need to remember? I was going to throw a shout out for the app here in a second, but anything we're missing, Jason, before we sign off?
Other than please like and subscribe. I mean, it's going to help us. It's going to help the cause. It'll be beneficial in the long run for sure. So we thank everybody that's following right now. And yeah, the app, go for it. We definitely want everybody to sign up for the app. We're going to put a lot of great information, putting out more content. There's a lot of great things in store for it right now. We're still kind of at the beginning stages, but it's a growing community, and there's a lot of features that we're going to be that we have planned. That's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of information. I think just make the whole cannabis community better.
Yeah, well said. We'll leave it at that. And hey, we got Easter going on this weekend, so everybody have a safe holiday. Enjoy each other, enjoy family, be safe, be well, and have a great weekend. And for Trichomes and the weekly roll up, I'm Jared Duggins. Thanks for tuning in. Jason, have a great weekend, sir.
You too, sir.
All right.